This is a super quick breakdown of a lighting setup from some shots that are behind me just here. And for this, the cameras were Pixar 6K and I think it was the Pocket 6K G2 that Rhys was on for the wide shots. I was on the close shots. It's taken me a long time to get around to doing this, and I want to do more of these videos. I used to do them a lot with my former production company, so now I want to get back into the flow of it, and I've got a lot of projects to talk about, so we're going to dive into this one. First of all, I had a very limited lighting package for this, and you might look at these shots and say, what lighting package? Surely you're just shooting in a barn just here, and that's sunlight coming in. Well, the intention with this project was that everything would be rustic and natural, and we'd just elevate things where we could by shooting on nice cameras and getting nice angles and that kind of thing, and it would all be outside. But in the event in Tuscany, we actually ended up shooting 2 days inside this barn because there was bad weather coming in. Now that bad weather meant we couldn't guarantee that we would be able to get the shots that we needed outside, and we didn't want to have to keep coming in and bringing everything inside and then waiting for some rain to pass or waiting for some nicer weather to come in and then take everything out and set up somewhere else. So I kind of pushed a little bit to stay in this location, and I said to everyone, I can light this. I can light it so that it'll look good, it'll look natural, and I'll be able to get it to a point where even when we get into the evening, we're going to be able to treat it like daylight. Now, at first, everyone, I feel, was a little bit skeptical because obviously people don't necessarily know what this means and they don't know what to expect from it. So they kind of looked at it and said, oh, surely there's enough light in here. And it's like, well, yes, there is just enough light in here at the moment, and we could probably shoot at a higher ISO and it would work okay. But if I take the time, an hour, maybe an hour and a half, to set up this lighting, then we're going to be good all day. And even when it gets into the evening, we're still going to be able to shoot. Now, in the event, the clouds actually came in, it got much darker. When we got to the end of the shoot, everyone realized when I started to turn off the lights, when we were breaking down about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, that actually it's pitch black. And I think that up until that point, people had just been in that room for 10 hours, hadn't really registered that it had got dark outside, and then they suddenly realized it's not a bright sunny day at all, it's actually pitch black outside. And we've got a little bit of an example of that just here. Now, the lighting package that I was using for this, coming back to it, is tiny compared to the kind of stuff that I used to use when I was at the production company. This is something which I was able to carry in like a medium-sized bag. 2 Zhiyun G300s, a B500, a C100, and a couple of little X60 RGB lights, along with a minimal amount of grip, a couple of clamps, a couple of stands, and also a 2-meter diffusion fabric, which we just strung up kind of like a shower curtain. Now what's going on here, I have all of the powerful cob Zhiyun lights outside on the right-hand side of frame, acting as sunlight coming in. So those are my beams of light coming through the windows. In addition to that, I've got the C100, which is still a very powerful light, but it's more of a tube style light, and it's kind of softer to start with because it's a little bit wider. That is pushing into the wall on the right hand side of frame here, and then bouncing off the wall into that diffusion fabric. This is all kind of pushed up very, very close to the right hand side of frame. And this is playing, you can see it on the side of Maritz's face just here. And that means that he's getting light which is softer than what's coming through those hard lights, but still feels like it's related to them. So maybe there's a window which is a little bit more opaque or dirtier, or maybe there's just some light kind of bouncing off a wall or catching on a curtain or something. That feels justified, a little bit more flattering, a little bit more rappy, and it just works and sits him in frame. Now, he is not the brightest thing in the frame, and that's kind of important. If it was another hard light hitting him, his skin may well get hotter than some of the things that are in the background just there. And at that point, it can begin to feel a little bit unbalanced and a little bit unnatural. But because he's got the diffused light, because it's a separate source and I can dial the levels up and down, I'm able to compensate and make sure that he's sitting within this frame, and there's hot spots behind him because there's bright sunny light coming in. Of course, it's a bright sunny day, it's not storming outside. And then we have lots of little pops of fire and things in the little pizza thing just there, and those play nicely, you know, it's practical source. And then on the left-hand side of the frame, we also had a big open fire, which we used at certain points. And the benefit of these two things is that they kicked up some smoke, and that carried into the air, and at certain points you can actually see it catching and creating shafts of light and creating atmosphere, which I just love. You know, it's great. I'd haze up any location I'm in to get that look. Here I was getting it for free on some of those shots, which was just beautiful when it all worked out. Now, in addition to the wide shots, we also had to have close shots working, and some of these close shots were like top downs on the food, because the food really is the star of the show just here. If that food didn't look good, it really wasn't doing the whole shoot justice. So I needed to get a little bit more light into the pans. Everything we had was kind of coming in sideways. Even that diffused light wasn't entirely wrapping into some of these pots and pans and that kind of thing. So I had one more fixture up in the ceiling, clamped onto one of the rafters. It was a little Zhiyun X60 RGB cob light, and that had the battery on, and also I had another USB-C battery running into that so that it would last for a longer period of time. Couldn't get any power up to it, so I was relying entirely on batteries for that light. Because of that, I didn't want to leave it running the whole time, but because it's got Bluetooth also, I was able to dial the levels up and down or completely turn the light off. So on the wide shots, I don't really need it. When we're just doing shots of Rhys talking, doesn't really factor into what we're doing. But when we go into any top downs where we have to catch details or anything close up, I can just bring the level up on it a little bit and fill everything in, make sure that we can see the food, make sure we're getting color and definition on what's in those pots. And indeed, as the day wore on and we got into the evening, I started to just dial that up to have a more general ambient level in the room as well. That's something which is often taken for granted. If you're filming in the daytime, even if it's overcast, there's a certain amount of sky light that will be coming into the room. If you don't compensate for that, the compensation here would have been putting in a couple of big bounce frames over the windows and firing another set of lights up into those to create sky rather than just creating sunlight. Sunlight without sky starts to feel really unnatural and it falls apart a bit. Here, I got away with it a lot of the time because there was a certain amount of ambient during the day. And then when we got into the evening, those lights that were coming through the windows were also hitting the floor, bouncing around the room. Some of them were playing on the other wall across the other side of the room. So that all helped to fill the room out a little bit. And indeed, I had a little silver bounce way back, catching a little bit of that sunlight and pushing it just into the back wall. And that helps to create a little bit more lift, a little bit more ambient in the room. But as we got to the end of the day, I just pushed the level on the X60 up. It wasn't ideal, but it just filled in the room a little bit and kept a certain level of ambient in the foreground at least. But in an ideal world, if I had some more fixtures in there, I'd have been able to counterbalance some of that drop in ambient. But I think that mostly it worked fine. Something I do want to draw attention to here, I was the only person setting all of this up, and we had, on this whole shoot, a crew of 3, which was myself, we had Rhys the director, and we had Callum, sound guy. Now everyone pitched in, and even the talent were pitching in and helping with stuff, but there was a lot to manage. Obviously setting up all of the mise en place just there, you know, getting all of the food ready, took an enormous amount of time for everyone. Getting all of the implements, the fires going, all of that stuff needed to be managed. So I didn't have an enormous amount of help really at all. I had to set up all of these lights by myself, get them all balanced, get them all pointed in the right direction, dial everything in, and then also manage it throughout the day, make sure that we weren't going to run out of battery on that light at the top, all of that kind of stuff. It started to rain a lot harder than we thought it was going to. We thought that perhaps it would just be a little bit of drizzle coming in, so I'd taken some precautions, which were a little bit sketchy, to be honest, and just put some umbrellas over the top of the lights. But actually a full-blown storm came in. I had wrapped everything, I had sealed up all of the connections, I had taken as much ballast and weighed down the stand as much as I could. They weren't very heavy duty stands. I don't recommend setting up lights in this kind of situation. I wouldn't have sent anyone out to deal with these when it was raining. I kind of pulled the power at one point because I thought, you know, we should just pull the power and just leave them be for a minute because this is all getting a little bit too wet out there. But in the event, it was fine. They aren't waterproof fixtures. You can get waterproof fixtures, and maybe, you know, you would have been using those if you'd had a big crew and doing all of that and you wanted to film and it was raining outside. It's manageable. You should also have completely waterproof rated connections as well, so that you're able to run power and distro safely. I was wrapping everything and taping it up and keeping it off the ground and just trying to make sure that it wasn't out in the wet. But I don't recommend doing it in this way. If you can possibly avoid it, you should be trying to unplug power and just step away from anything electrical at that point. Certainly don't go out and start messing around with stuff in the wet. It is definitely not the one. If you have any questions, drop them down below. More than happy to answer those. And hopefully I'll be getting some more content out like this very, very soon. I've got a new way of doing it. I'm trying to make it less formal. I've got this on my phone, so I'm able to just set this up and sort of move it around and not be quite as wed to a really fixed setup as I was when I was doing this with the Canon C70 and the lighting and it just got a bit hard to do in between all of the shoots that I'm doing. So doing it with the minimal setup just here means that I can kind of let go a little bit more and hopefully make it a bit more free-flowing and less prescriptive, I guess. Fingers crossed, we get more videos out.